All right, today we're diving into the incredible life of a man who, in just 39 years, managed to spark a spiritual renaissance, build a bridge between the East and the West, and, awaken an entire nation. We're talking about Swami Vivekananda, the man they called the cyclonic monk from India.
So picture this. The year is 1893. The city is Chicago. The event? The first ever parliament of the world's religions. An unknown monk from India, dressed in saffron robes, steps up to the podium. He's nervous, his heart is just pounding, but when he finally speaks, these 5 simple words, just 5 words, absolutely electrify the entire hall.
I mean, just think about that for a second. A 2-minute standing ovation from 7,000 people, just for a greeting. So who was this man, and how on earth did his message create such an immediate, such an explosive impact? Well, that's what we're going to explore. His journey from a skeptical young intellectual to a global spiritual leader who really did change how the world saw Hinduism forever.
Okay, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with that historic moment in Chicago, then we'll jump back to his early days, dig into his radical social and philosophical ideas, see how scholars view him today, and then we'll wrap it all up with 5 key takeaways.
The press, they called him the cyclonic monk from India, and honestly, they weren't wrong. His speech was like a storm of completely fresh ideas for the West. For the very first time on a stage that big, he introduced the core ideas of Hindu philosophy, and he did it by championing this incredible message of universal tolerance and acceptance.
So what made this so revolutionary? Well, you have to remember, he wasn't trying to convert anybody. In a room where most speakers were, subtly or not so subtly pushing their faith as the one true way, he comes along and presents this vision where all religions are valid paths to the same divine truth. This radically inclusive message just completely shifted the Western view of Hinduism from like a collection of strange rituals to a really profound and universal philosophy.
Right. So, to really understand the man on that stage, we need to rewind a bit and go back to his origins. See, before he was the world-famous Swami Vivekananda, he was Narendranath Datta, or Naren as they called him. He was this brilliant, restless, and deeply rational young man from an aristocratic Calcutta family born way back in 1863.
This timeline really maps out his incredibly short but jam-packed life. He was a product of 2 different worlds. His father was this progressive, rationalist attorney, but his mother was a devoutly religious woman, a great storyteller. And Naren, he just absorbed it all. He mastered Western philosophy, science, logic, but all of that intellectual training was in this constant, intense battle with a deep spiritual yearning that he just couldn't shake.
And this was the question, the burning, direct question that Naren would ask all the most famous spiritual leaders of his time. He was part of the Brahmo Samaj, which was a reformist Hindu movement, but their intellectual, philosophical approach just wasn't enough for him. He needed direct, tangible experience. He wasn't interested in theories about God. He wanted proof.
And then, finally, he gets his answer from the mystic Ramakrishna. But here's the thing, Naren didn't just accept it. Being a true rationalist, he initially brushed off Ramakrishna's ecstatic visions as, hallucinations. For months, he fought against the very ideas he would later champion, things like idol worship, the concept of a formless God. But Ramakrishna's profound, tangible spiritual authority, it eventually broke through Naren's skepticism, and it perfectly synthesized his sharp intellectual mind with his passionate spiritual heart.
So after his guru, Ramakrishna, passed away, Vivekananda spent 5 years wandering all across India as a penniless monk. And on this journey, he saw the nation's incredible spiritual richness, but he also came face to face with a shocking reality. Just immense poverty, social stagnation, and the crushing oppression of the masses. And that experience forged his life's mission. He realized he had to uplift the nation, both materially and spiritually.
This quote, this is the absolute heart of his practical Vedanta. It's a philosophy that feels incredibly modern, almost like a kind of spiritual social justice. He argued that it's completely useless to preach philosophy to people who are starving or oppressed. Spiritual awakening, he insisted, has to go hand in hand with solving material suffering. The core idea was to see God in every single human being, especially the poor, the sick, the marginalized, and to serve them as the highest, most direct form of worship.
And this just brilliantly shows his social agenda. He didn't just suggest a few reforms, he basically declared war on social evils. He called the hereditary caste system a mental disease and a total perversion of religion. He famously argued that a nation is like a bird that can't fly on one wing, demanding education and empowerment for women. And then, in 1897, he founded the Ramakrishna Mission to put these ideals into action, creating this amazing network of schools, hospitals, and disaster relief programs that's still going strong today.
Okay, now let's get into his philosophical core. So, Vivekananda was a huge champion of Advaita Vedanta. That's the ancient Hindu philosophy of non-duality. But his interpretation, which was deeply influenced by his guru Ramakrishna, was really unique. So unique, in fact, that it's still a pretty hot topic of debate among scholars.
So, to really get what he did, we have to understand the traditional view first, which was most famously laid out by the 8th century philosopher Shankara. Think of it like a dream. When you're dreaming, that dream world feels completely real, right? But the moment you wake up, you realize it was all just an illusion. Traditional Advaita says that from the ultimate point of view, only that formless, absolute reality, Brahman, is real. Everything else, the world, you, me, even a personal God, it's all part of this big cosmic dream. Now, this is where Vivekananda's interpretation creates this profound shift. For him, the world isn't some illusion to be escaped. It is a real manifestation of the divine that needs to be served. And a personal God isn't some lesser, temporary idea. It's an equally real aspect of that same single reality. See, his vision wasn't about denying the world, but about seeing the sacred in the world. This creates a philosophy of, well, all-encompassing or integral oneness. This analogy right here just brilliantly illustrates his point. So ask yourself, is a wave unreal? No, of course not. It's real. You can see it. It has power. But does it have an existence that's independent from the ocean? Absolutely not. For Vivekananda, we and the world are just like that wave. We are perfectly real, but our entire existence is completely dependent on the vast, infinite ocean of Brahman, the ultimate reality. So as you can imagine, this unique, world-affirming philosophy is precisely why his legacy has sparked this fascinating ongoing debate among scholars. I mean, how do we even classify his thought? Was he just a traditionalist in modern clothes? A brilliant but maybe contradictory thinker? Or was he something entirely new? Well, scholars are generally divided into these three camps. The first group basically sees him as a modernizer, someone who took Shankara's ancient tradition and just repackaged it for a global audience. The second camp points to what they see as contradictions in his lectures, arguing that he never quite reconciled the old world-denying philosophy with the world-affirming experience he got from his guru. But then there's a third camp, and they argue that he taught a totally coherent and distinct philosophy. They call it integral Advaita, a new synthesis that doesn't just tolerate the world, but actually embraces it as divine.
So with all this complexity, how do we even begin to sum up such a monumental figure? Okay, let's try and distill his vast legacy down into 5 crucial, interconnected points that really define who he was.
First, he was a cultural ambassador, building a bridge of mutual respect between the East and the West. Second, a radical social reformer who declared war on the caste system and championed the poor. Third, a practical philosopher who taught that serving God and humanity was the highest form of worship. Fourth, a philosophical innovator who reinterpreted ancient wisdom for our modern world. And finally, he was the awakener of a nation, whose message of strength and self-belief was a key catalyst for India's independence movement. And every single one of these roles flowed from his unwavering vision of our own inherent divinity.
You know, his solution to our problems was the realization of our shared divinity, that oneness that connects every single one of us. And this leaves us with a really powerful question for our own time. In a world that feels so fractured by division, what can we learn from a message that sees service as worship and every human being as a temple of God?